I've heard it. I've heard it from a few people. There's some model makers that I very highly respect who don't like 3D printing. For some people have perfected the techniques of doing it a certain way, and 3D printing is a whole new disruptive technology that's going to change everything. The days of hand-mastered resin parts are probably disappearing. Again, it is a convenient technology. You can make parts with it that would be almost impossible to scratch build. Like, at least consistently, anyway.
Hey, do you like 3D printing? Because I sure don't. I thought I would. I bought the printer, as you can see behind me here, and tried a few things, but it's not as simple as I hoped it would be. My expectation would be that you have your model, you go in the program, and you automatically support it, and it all works well. That's not the case. There's a whole science/art to it, which is going to be a topic for another episode. But that's actually how I met up with Sophie Rose of Rose Model Company. I was fooling around on Instagram, I gave her a follow, and then she messaged me, and we kind of developed a friendship from there. And that was back in September 2022, so it's been quite some time now. And even the episode that you're about to see is a few months old, because I took a little break from this, trying to find a way to make things a bit easier and sustainable in the edit. All that to say, what is up, plastic addicts? Welcome back to the SciFi Model Podcast, hosted by Jason's Model Shop. I'm your host, Jason C. Marshall, and if you follow me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and Threads to some degree, you can actually see some of the work I've been doing on things, including the K7 space station. That's kind of the big thing, because I had started working on K7 as just we'll call it a nostalgia build. The K7 was the first model I ever lit way back in 2012. So I got a lot of good feelings with the model, despite its many, many, many shortcomings. But I was talking to Sophie, and I was looking at some screen grabs, or a few VFX. It's actually the blue screen VFX shots I found on YouTube, and in it, K7 was rotated in such a way you could see how the grain silo was mounted in the original series. The Greg Jean one is a bit more integrated into the hull. So I looked at that, I'm like, hey, Sophie, I've messed around in Tinkercad, but I don't have any 3D design skills. I have trouble working in a virtual environment. Do you think you could kind of draft something up? And about that time, I was also talking to Jerry at HD Model Works, and he had developed a shuttle bay for the K7 space station. And he's like, hey, you're working on this. Why don't I send you one of the test shots? It's you're still kind of working it out. So he sent me that, and Sophie sent me the grain silo. In this case, she actually sent me the 3D file so I could print it. Just made more sense, although my prints aren't very clean, as we've talked about. And I was like, hey, Jerry, you should check this out, because I think this and your window masks and your shuttle bay would make a good little all complementary stuff. So we've been kind of all working together, but the K7, which is fundamentally done and posted on my socials, so go check it out. The parts set for that is going to start, Jerry's going to start rolling that out with, the shuttle bay that he developed, and the grain silo that Sophie developed with my input, because I can't design things. I can build things, can't design them. And then, of course, the window masks. And I even figured out how to get lighting up to the top of the top antenna. So there's a number of things coming to improve this kit, and none of that would have happened if Sophie hadn't thanked me for following her back in September of 2022, and we wouldn't develop this friendship we have. So I hope you enjoy my conversation after this lengthy intro with Sophie. I think there's a lot to gain from it. Let's start with the basics. Tell me who you are. What's the elevator pitch? Who is Sophie Rose?
Well, I'm from London. I've been modeling for most of my life, like mostly military models, but
Hmm.
recently made the great jump to science fiction because been a science fiction nerd all my life, like
Yep.
mostly Star Trek, but I like all science fiction. Uh, yeah, I an archaeologist, like by trade, so which I've been told apparently archaeologists make good model makers. Um, but my true passion is model making and 3D design and 3D printing. Got into 3D printing during the first lockdown in the UK in 2020 and never looked back. Like I've dived headfirst into that rabbit hole, and I don't think I can see the light anymore.
Nice, nice. Well, what am I trying to say? Well, first of all, thank you for your help with 3D printing on my end.
Oh no,
I'm actually running off another neck right now.
excellent.
Um, because I got two to build. I've got my own and one for a client.
Yeah.
You're a 3D designer, and so it's a side gig right now. You still have your primary job.
Yeah. The hope is that eventually it becomes my primary job, but a little bit at a time. Like I get there eventually.
Oh, I get that. I get that. Same thing with what I'm doing,
Yeah,
which would be, doing it as a job versus, just on the side.
that'd be living the dream, right?
What are you working on at the moment? Tell me about that,
In
or tell
the
us about that.
Well, with the great love for Star Wars revival recently, and especially with Ahsoka being on everybody's minds, I am doing the Ghost from Rebels. So Hera Syndulla's ship. So I'm currently
Yes.
working on that, which will be at 1/72 scale. So it will go with the Bandai Millennium Falcon quite nicely. It's a slow project. I'm modeling it more to look like the Rogue One slash Ahsoka one rather than the animated show one, just because it will have that Corellian freighter feel to it with all the greeblies all over it.
Right.
It's going to have a nice interior. You'll be able to see vacuum formed canopies, custom decals, maybe even a little bit of custom photo etch chucked in there as well. And the hope is that I am going to sell the files, put the files out for sale eventually, and for people who don't have 3D printers, be selling a kit as well. So
Uh, that's what I was going to ask because we've kind of talked about this, and you're available for commissions and whatnot, and I hadn't asked before, like, what's the plans? Is it sell files or sell physical product?
yeah, I've gone a bit backward and forwards with it because I know from a lot of people who do sell files that there are people who I like to call reprinters who will print your files and then sell them on eBay and Etsy, and then you don't see anything from it. But I also understand that having the 3D files is convenient for people. Shipping a massive box of heavy resin halfway across the world is prohibitively expensive these days.
It sounds like the model works strategy because yeah, I bought a number of their files. That's when I've been kind of
Yeah.
bouncing you to help figure out what to do with it to make it print properly. But I do know that they sell a couple kits, like completed kits.
Oh yeah. So I know they just released their files for the 1 to 32nd scale TIE bomber, which looks
Oh,
quite nice. I think I'm gonna probably have to buy
hmm
those ones at some point.
hmm
Do have a bit of a love for
it
the TIE bomber.
it's this will actually kind of lead into a bigger conversation because I was watching a video that Boyd from Trekworks put up. And one of the things he commented on was that some of his followers are like 3D printing isn't modeling and this and that. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like just because you don't have a 3D printer, like is that the issue? Like
I've heard it from a few people. There's some model makers that I very highly respect who don't like 3D printing. And I can
mhm,
understand the reasons for it for some people. Some people have perfected the techniques of doing it a certain way. And 3D printing is a whole new disruptive technology that's going to change everything, which is
mhm,
understandable. The days of hand mastered resin parts are probably disappearing.
yeah.
Um, like, but again, it is a convenient technology. You can make parts with it that would be almost impossible to scratch build, like, at least consistently anyway. I mean, I know for people who make scratch build tanks, for instance, scratch building track links is a nightmare because you've got to make them all one at a time.
Oh.
So 3D printing of tank tracks has become a huge market that people are producing them left, right, and center. I think there's one guy whose Patreon, he does nothing but 3D printed tank tracks, and he makes a lot of money out of it. But it's the future. I think we're going to see more and more as the printers get faster and they get more convenient to use and easier. We're going to see more and more entire kits produced by 3D printers. So
it's so handy. I mean, I'd held off on 3D printing for a very long time, partly because I'm like, well, I don't even know where to start. But my friend who was on the episode before this, the one that just went up, he had a setup, so he kind of showed me what he had. I'm like, okay, now I had the missing pieces I kind of understand now. And I mean, this setup was under $500, so it was about $500. So the cost to get started was relatively low. Not low, relatively low.
And I got my first printer, I think it was the Elegoo Mars Pro. I got that for £150, I think it was. And I was originally washing my prints in a bucket with isopropyl on it.
Right.
And UV light torch to cure them. I'm on my third setup, which is the Elegoo Saturn 2, which is a phenomenally fantastic printer. And I've got like their professional 2-piece wash and cure station. I'm looking at upgrading next year because the 12K printers have just come out. The Elegoo Mars 9K, it does a resolution of I think 12 nanometers, so it's insanely detailed for tiny parts. The hope is to build up a bit more of a print farm on the go.
Yeah, that's actually, it's funny. I just saw a TikTok of someone's like, yeah, I have a 3D printing business, and like my cost to start was like $1,500. They got like 3 printers lined up, and
yeah, I mean, you can go as much as you're willing to spend on printers. If you want to go crazy, you can go for the Formlabs printers that are about $5,000 each, like for a starter model, and they do incredible prints. But is it really worth the thousands of pounds more? Is the question. If you're doing engineering work, most probably, but for us modelers, I think that hobby grade printers are more than good enough at the moment. I chat regularly with, I don't know if you know Tom Anise. He does lots of upgrade parts for aircraft cockpits, tiny switches and stuff. He does phenomenal work, and I talk with him, and he runs an entire business off of commercial printers. So, yeah, just hobby printers, and does incredible work on them.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it comes down more to the development of the model rather than the printer stuff.
Yeah.
Once you get below about a 30 nanometer resolution on the XY axis of the screen, you can't really notice the difference by eye.
My kind of introduction to 3D printing beyond knowing it was a thing is I bought a couple parts from Shapeways, and we've talked about that, the Voyager deflector dish, the Accurate deflector dish. The seller, I can't remember who now.
Oh, yeah, the name escapes me, but he does some very nice parts there.
Yeah, it was good, and I've been kind of trying to push. So I've been trying to push Jerry at HGA Model Works to push Green Strawberry to make one as part of their fruit pack, because they got all these pieces. But I'm like, yeah, you spent all this time, guys, making photo etch for the deflector dish, but the deflector dish that comes with the kit is wrong. It's not just a little bit wrong; it's a lot wrong. And I don't know if he's made any progress with that.
It would be great if they did, because, like you say, it is very wrong. I think it was a kit that was like hand mastered in 1996. I think.
Yeah.
You can very much tell that was not a 3D CAD design. So. Yeah. Speaking of which, I am developing an entire range of upgrades for that kit to accurize it.
That is right. I started working on window frames before you and I started talking, then realized you were doing the exact same thing.
I've done all the large windows, like
Hmm.
I showed you. I've done the smaller windows as well, which I know
Hmm.
there is a seller on Etsy who does the same as well. I think
Okay.
his windows might be a slightly more accurate size than mine.
Hmm.
It's slightly shorter than my ones, but
Yeah, 'cause they
I've
should
yeah,
they should be one, like, what was it, 1 millimeter by 2 millimeter or 1 millimeter by 3 millimeter. I can't remember which, but
I went
the
off the kit ones, and I think
Mhm.
I made mine about they're like slightly more than a millimeter tall or
Mhm.
2 millimeters
Yeah,
tall. So
it's one of those things. It's such a small detail, and even being slightly out of scale won't have a significant difference. So it's really just comes down to, I guess, purchaser preference. I actually got the idea from someone on Starship Modeler. I think it was Starship Modeler. It might have been the Star Trek Modelers group on Facebook. I can't remember which. But they had done the openings, and they hadn't done frames like you and I were doing, but they did
yeah,
clear inserts.
that's a good idea.
Yeah. And then, the idea was to put them in, fill the edges, sand them, and then do paint masks, which is something I'm working on.
Yeah, see that's
Not, but
what I do is paint masks for the windows. It's like what I need.
but I'm not doing 3D print. I'm basically just opening the holes,
Yeah.
putting the clear UV resin in.
And
But
masking.
yeah, just like I did on the refit. So it doesn't matter if the openings are perfect, because as long as once you get the resin in there, you just put the mask on and make sure it's as straight as possible. So the idea is to create a kind of a comparison, like, hey, there's a number of approaches to this. As a builder, you decide what's best for you, but now you have options.
Oh yeah.
Whether it's 3D print frames they buy from you, or masks they purchase, or just cut strips of masking tape.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it brings a whole new wealth of options to some very old kits.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the one thing I was going to say though, when it kind of come back to the shapeways things, is that there's a number of, I'm sure you've seen them, a number of great files that are not files, I guess, great products out there, but it's so expensive on shapeways. Like, it's some things are prohibitively costly for a
Yeah,
com for a company that just does 3D printing. I mean, come on.
yeah. They also use a technique called laser sintering, so it's basically like a powder which has a laser fire the layers down rather than UV, which leaves an unfortunately a slightly grainy texture to the surface. uh, their,
Yes.
their newer techniques are a lot better than they were, but they're also a lot more expensive. So
Hmm.
so some of the newer parts they've got have been quite smooth. I got the I think it's Falcon Parts 3D makes the figures 172 figures for the Bandai Falcon, and I got a little Han and Chewie, and they're good enough that you can recognize them as Han and Chewie.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so they do some really good parts on there. I got the corridor that goes behind the cockpit as well, which isn't part of the kit. So,
Hmm.
and that looks fantastic, especially considering all you can see is the little bit through the doorway in the back of the
Hmm.
cockpit. But some of the parts are great, but like you said, they are insanely expensive.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, it's because Shapeway charge by volume. So the larger your part or the more space it takes up to print, the more expensive it becomes. So
Yeah.
even relatively small parts become quite expensive rapidly. Like,
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I've got the cutaway Falcon. I found one. My friend Matt's Model Shop and HD Model Works they're both doing that, or have done it, or in various states of completion. I'm like, well, I mean, I don't want to be left out. And I saw one at one of the hobby shops here in the city, and I'm like, it was like $60. Okay, scoop it up because there's not a lot of these out there anymore.
mhm.
It's mostly fine, but the cockpit on that old MPC AMT one has
Oh yeah, it's
always been garbage. Apparently they did all the work on the new Falcon, the new reissue, fixed the sides, fixed the engines, fixed the dish, left the cockpit.
yeah. I mean, it's a very old kit now, so
Hmm.
there's only so much they can do, I guess. But
Hmm.
I mean, for me, if you're going to build a Falcon, the only one to build is the Bandai Perfect Grade one. It's an absolute beauty, like, of a kit. Like, went together absolutely beautiful, despite my ham-fisted attempt to make it worse.
I don't have that. I had the fine molds. I found the remember I was telling you about using like Facebook Marketplace or things like that
Yeah.
to find models. I found a fine molds for $150 from someone.
Oh, lovely.
So
yeah, no, that's a very hard kit to get hold of.
mm-hmm. So yeah, same thing. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, hey, I gotta go get this.
Well, I mean, this is another thing that 3D printing can come in handy for, is for things that never got made into kits. So
Yep.
my project for After the Ghost is to do a Type 9 shuttle, which has always been one of my favorite. It's the Voyager's shuttles.
The little speedy, the horsepower looking one.
Yeah. I've always loved that shuttle, and I wanted to do a full one with interior in either 1/32 or 1/24 scale, so like quite a large size one.
I think Cosmic Scale Models has done one, but I don't know what.
Yeah, it's a solid one, unfortunately. So it's the blacked out windows. So
yeah, okay.
I really want it with the interior as well. So. And then who knows, I might do one of my more favorite ships, the Akira class, at some point. Is I'm forever sad that an injection molded kit never came out of that ship. It seems like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, but that's the thing though. With after I talked about this before, with round 2 pretty much has the only license for Star Trek. I mean, yeah, Mobius is still doing the Kelvin and the Franklin, but that's Revell Germany is doing the original series Enterprise, but I think that's about it. So there's no competition. No. So round 2 is like meh. People have been asking for a 350 Reliant for 10 years. Meh.
Oh, I'd love a 350 Reliant. I've seen that conversion kit. I can't remember who it was who made one, but that's been long out of production, I think, sadly. I don't think my printer's quite big enough to print those parts.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got to actually build the refit Enterprise before I decide to do a total conversion.
Yep. But yeah, like I said, so 3D printing, I can see why it's divisive, because like, so you got Shapeways out there. I mean, I'm sure there's other companies like Shapeways, but I couldn't tell you what they are. But when you have like that's kind of like the name people recognize, and they go to buy something, it's like $50 for a piece like this. It's a turnoff.
Yeah, it really is.
And then people you can buy a 3D printer, but I don't know how to 3D design. So what's the point? Because they also don't know that people sell files, not just completed kits.
Yeah.
Or kit parts, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, there are some very good sites to get files and parts as well. Like Colts 3D is a good site. CG Trader, obviously Thingiverse. There's a lot of people who just put stuff out for free. So if you look on there, there's some great stuff on there that people have just thrown out into the world for people to do what they want with. I found an entire 1/24 scale X-Wing on there that was actually unbelievably accurate as well. So printed that up, then got to the point where I was building it, dropped it off my workbench and broke all the wings off and binned it in a fit of rage. So that's one I'll probably redo at some point.
You just said something I want to talk about that doesn't get talked about, is rage quitting in model making, trashing models, because I've done it.
Yeah,
and you're the only other person so far I've heard who has openly admitted they've done the same thing, and I know it happens a lot more than just the two of us.
No, if a model has given me nothing but pain the entire time I've been building it, and then something goes wrong, I will just get rid of it. I did a Special Hobby 1/32 Tempest, which is an absolute pig of a kit. The wing dihedral is the wrong shape. You have to get a completely replacement nose section for it to make it even remotely accurate. And it fought me the entire way, and I got so far through the build, and then I was just like, no, I've had enough of this, and threw it in the bin. I was getting no joy from building it.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. When the joy is gone, what's the point?
Yeah. Which is why I love doing science fiction now, because science fiction
Hmm.
brings me nothing but joy. Like you can be way
Hmm.
more creative with science fiction than you ever can with historical models. Uh, there are the so-called rivet counters, although I hate that term in sci-fi, but you can be more creative. It's like my A-wing, I did my own custom paint scheme for it, which went down quite well. It was a Phoenix Squadron one, so from Rebels.
Okay.
I yeah, like my Intrepid class that I'm working on will be my own custom ship. I'm not going to do the Voyager, but
Right.
everybody does the Voyager.
Hmm.
Um, although I will do the Enterprise for the refit.
Yeah. No, you got
That's
to. You got to. I mean, come on. Um,
yeah, I
yeah,
just like the
it's
creativity. So you
yeah,
can
no,
be way more
it's
creative.
and that's what Ken and I talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess. Because he does miniature wargaming, so Warhammer BattleTech. We had that conversation. Is it sci-fi modeling? Is it not? Yes, it is. Despite people who may say otherwise, but we did talk about military models and whatnot. It's like, yeah, I'd love to do them, but the it's not that there isn't creativity, but the creativity comes from choosing the level of accuracy and maybe what theater it's served in. But
Yeah.
the amount of freedom to go outside the lines generally isn't there.
Yeah, it's why when I do historic, because I've still got a lot of historical kits in the stash,
Hmm.
I tend to either do what I call historically plausible, so not necessarily a specific vehicle, but could be one, or I go for a what if subject because you can do some quite fun and crazy things with the what if subjects as well. So
Right.
you get some interesting stuff in the machine and Krieger like lines for the what
Hmm.
if stuff. A lot of people like their German camo for their machine and Krieger.
Do you ever? So, if you do military, you must watch Night Shift.
I do, yeah. Night
He's
shift.
so good. Like his videos are so good.
He's just like a god of model making at this
Hmm.
point, I think. And from what I hear, he's a very lovely person as well. So,
Hmm. The and yeah, like I said, the quality's there. His videos, is the way he describes things and whatnot. It's very very much on point. Um, and they're just on the way he does his videos that even if you're like, I don't give a shit about armor,
mm,
but I watch his videos because they're
yeah.
they're engaging and interesting.
I mean, I've been known to build the odd tank every now and then,
Hmm.
but it's definitely not what I'd consider my primary choice of subject. I
Yeah.
started an aircraft modeler, so
Hmm.
uh, but his videos, the simple joy he brings to building each subject and the
Yeah.
attention to detail that he can do is phenomenal.
Well, the other thing, there's a benefit to modelers watching other genres get built because there's techniques that he does that I never would have learned if I only watched exclusively sci-fi builders.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I have an example as well. I don't know if you know John Simmons. Like he does a lot of Star Wars studio scale models.
Okay.
Absolutely, his YouTube channel is well worth a watch. He very much builds. I find that when you get to Star Wars models, you've got two types of builders. You've got the people who build them as like models and like replicas of as if they were a real vehicle, and you've got the people who want to recreate the studio filming miniature,
Yeah.
uh, which they call studio scale. Like, and he's very much a studio scale modeler. He's got the techniques that ILM used in the 70s down pat. Like he
Okay.
can replicate the exact sort of techniques they used for weathering and chipping and stuff, and it's incredible. And I model mine more as if they were a realistic vehicle. So I go for a bit more mixed in aircraft and armor weathering. But I've
Right.
also, from watching his videos, I've started to incorporate some of the ILM techniques into my weathering so that they got more tied into the Star Wars universe. Like
Hmm.
downside to Star Trek is you don't get to weather stuff as much as,
Yeah.
which is my favorite part of model making, I will admit. But
Yeah. I've started adding Star Wars models to the stash for that reason, for the ability to go to go and have a bit more fun with the creativity.
that's why I love the rebel ships because you can go beat them up to absolute hell because they're meant to be. So, I know my A-wing looks like it's been through hell and back.
That's good. Just quick side. So all this is on your Instagram.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
Rose Model Company.
Having finally taken the leap, I would recommend it to any builders who like, they want to get parts, but there's no one selling parts. So you can buy files. You can learn as you did the process of designing and kind of make your own stuff. And but tell me about that a little bit, because when I was asking you, like, well, if I want to do this, where would I learn? And you're like, yeah, just start and use YouTube videos.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it ain't no thing. Just do it. Just figure it out.
Well, I mean, for me personally, I started with Fusion like you did. I can't remember what the original file was. It's something I had, and I wanted to modify it slightly. And I'd watched some of Will Patterson's videos and some other people who'd recommended Fusion because it's an engineering level CAD software, but it has an option
Mhm.
for a free version of it for hobbyists, which was
Okay.
fantastic because I'd looked at Blender before, and you open Blender, immediately see the 5 million buttons it has and go, oh my God, I'm never going to learn how to use this.
Yeah.
And then all of the other decent ones are hundreds of pounds a year to like subscribe to. So I
Hmm.
was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to really get into this hobby. So I don't want to pay for something. So I started learning Fusion. And then every time I got stuck, I would inevitably go on YouTube and go, how do I do this? Like, and there was somebody out there who would have the exact video for what you needed to know.
Hmm.
Like, so I just learned it a bit piecemeal like that. It's probably not the best way to learn Fusion. Like, there's probably a lot of it that I missed out.
Well,
There,
so my day job is carpentry and renovations, and years ago I redid my mother-in-law's bathroom. Like, it was so bad it had to go everything had to come out. And I'm like, I know a couple things, and what I don't know, I'll use YouTube. And I did, and now it's my job. I mean, I would prefer it not to be my job. I would prefer this to be my
yeah,
job. But I make a decent wage doing it, and it all started because I used YouTube to
yeah.
figure out the things I didn't know. So yeah, I completely understand. It's completely possible. It's just finding the right videos that resonate so you can actually get what they're saying.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's again, it's an issue with CAD software. There's a lot of people who make videos based on the fact that you already know somewhat what to do.
Yeah.
So I would recommend anyone starting out find a playlist of tutorial videos to do all the basics with, because it took me a long time to learn some of those basics because I was finding odd workarounds for them instead of taking an easy route to doing it.
Right.
Uh, so I'd recommend, like, there's a lot of free playlists on YouTube of people teaching Blender and Fusion and various other, even down to Tinkercad. Like, they're all teaching that. There's people who put hundreds of hours of videos out there for people to watch on
Mhm.
every specific bit of the software. So Blender, for instance, there's must be millions of videos on Blender. So if you wanted to get into 3D modeling generally, especially for animation, Blender is the way to go. But specifically for 3D printing, Fusion is very good. It's a software that's designed to do hard body modeling, so you wouldn't use it to make figures or like soft objects, like organic objects. It's very much designed for. It's fantastic for making starships with, like, because you can do all the beautiful like shapes and stuff on it. But
Mhm.
wouldn't necessarily use it to model the crew. Like, so,
Yeah. Well, Ken, my friend, once again, my friend Ken, he's the one who kind of helped me kind of seal the deal to get into this. I think I said he does wargaming and whatnot, and he's designing a carrying case. And he was showing me in Fusion one of the things you can do. He was able to design the piece in 2D, like whatever piece he needed, and then he was able to extrude it out to 3D. Like, that's a built-in function. I'm like, that's pretty cool, actually.
yeah, that's why I like Fusion, because it's entirely sketch based. So I think there's two types of modeling, and you'll have to forgive me. I'm not an engineer, so I know Blender uses something called vector based modeling, so it's more based on the triangles, the polygons of the model, so you can more easily manipulate the shape like that. Fusion's more like a sketch-based system. So you build a sketch and it makes all lovely, nice, solid blocks,
Right.
like things. So I like that because it's good for doing what I like to model. But for if you're more into like doing, I don't know, for instance, you wanted to model a Mon Calamari cruiser, I wouldn't do that in Fusion. I'd use
Right.
Blender probably. And if for
Yeah.
people who are of a more artistic bent, like and want to do like figures and miniatures, ZBrush, as we would say, or you would probably say ZBrush.
Well, no, I'm in Canada, so we use Zed.
Oh, okay, that's good. So for our American friends out there, yeah, ZBrush is the software for sculpting. So the people who use that software are genuinely artists at this point. It allows you to just manipulate a 3D object as if it was actual clay and sculpt it. So
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, so in fact, if anybody out there is very good at it, I need some figures tonight.
Nice. But it's good because I said it's also good to kind of have you on the show relatively early in its life to be like, hey, anyone who wants to get in 3D printing, yes, don't let not knowing holding you back, because once you have it in hand and you need to figure something out, you can figure it out. Versus thinking about it, it's an abstract concept until you have it and need it, which makes it harder to learn without a lockdown reference point.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, 3D printing seems like the most daunting subject when you first look at it, because there's 1,000 different opinions on 1,000 different objects, and everybody seems to have their own way of doing things. And you realize quite rapidly when you buy your first printer, it's not plug and play. There's a lot of tinkering you have to do and a lot of like learning you need to do to get it to run properly. As much as I would love it to be like a replicator from Star Trek, you just tell it what you want and it prints it. We're not quite yet. And it's also a slow process and a messy process. And I think a lot of people aren't aware that is how it is. It should be more widely known that you're going to make a lot of mistakes and it's going to cost a lot of money when you first start. But once you get there, the stuff you can produce is phenomenal.
Well, even with the number of failed prints I had, getting started, so it's been probably a couple months now. So I'm still learning, to figure things out. But I'm still on my first 1 kilogram bottle of gray.
Oh yeah, I mean, I buy mine in 5 kilo jerry cans at a time now, so I go through so much of the stuff.
Yeah.
But as I say, once you get the hang of it, things you can do with 3D printing are incredible. Just the possibilities, you can create anything you can think of. And it never stops being magical that you take a bunch of pixels from your screen and turn them into a real object.
Yeah,
that never stops.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. A friend of mine, I got a couple friends who are magicians, musicians, and I'm like, I feel like 3D printing can be perceived the same way. I'm like, you have no music, then you have an idea in your head, and you do a couple things, and then you have music.
Yeah.
That's like witchcraft to me, and same thing. I understand the daunting aspect of 3D printing is you have an idea in your head, and you go to your computer, and you do a few things, and then when you're done, you got a piece.
Yeah. 2 examples that I've always wanted was, one was a 1/32 scale lunar lander, which bewilderingly, they made a 1/32 scale Apollo command module, but never made the lunar lander to go with it.
Yeah.
And there's a producer on Colts called Vincent Mean who made the files for one, which I have. I haven't got printing yet because I've already have way too big a backlog of projects, but and now I have the files so I can make my dream project.
You have an Apollo command module on your Facebook, or not Facebook, your Instagram. Now, is that a kit with 3D parts that you made, or is that all 3D that you made?
No, the original kit is the Revel one, like in 1/32 scale, but it's been entirely gutted out and replaced with 3D parts.
Okay.
Again, all of those parts were created by Vincent Mean, with the exception of the switches on the control panel, which I made my own ones.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I actually replicated in 1/32 scale the sort of guarded switches that they had on the control panel.
Yep.
So that's all done. The lunar lander will be entirely 3D printed. So.
You can just for fun, whenever you get some time, just make a full size panel that has SCE to aux. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Believe it or not, you can actually buy them as light switches. Seen a company on Instagram that sells Apollo replica panels to use as light switches. The other project that I always wanted to do is the one I'm currently doing, which is the Phoenix.
Yes.
Again, bewilders me that they never made a kit of it when it came out, considering how prominent it is in the movie. But
it is literally only the most important ship in Star Trek history, like in universe history.
Yeah, exactly. So now I can have one on my shelf. I did unfortunately have to reprint the main hull because I put the hole for the mounting rod at the wrong end. So yeah, it happens. But again, that comes back to there will still be mistakes, even for me, and I've been printing for years. I can get everything perfect, get the angle right, the support's perfect, the resin is perfect. I've got brand new FEP on my printer, and then sometimes my printer will just go no and fail it, and I'll have no idea why. Because I'll restart the print and it will work fine. So for some reason the heavens didn't align on one time, and it just chooses not to print it. So
yeah, it's well, that's just it. I said, you do the best you can, and with all the knowledge you have. But yeah, like I said, sometimes it's just like nah. Sorry.
I was going to say my single greatest tip for anybody buying a 3D printer is get a screen protector. Because the amount of times I've had resin drop on the screen and not realize it's underneath the vat, and once it hardens onto that screen, you're looking at like a lot of money to replace your screen. So screen protectors, some people don't like them because they say it softens the detail of your model, but I don't know about that. But I'd rather slightly softer details.
I actually just changed the FEP on this one, and I'm actually the new screen protectors are arriving today.
That's good.
I'm still on my first, but it's good to have them for.
I recently watched a Lee Dalmaso video where he said that he hadn't changed his FEP in over a year. I was like, blimey, I change mine every few months.
Yeah, it's something. I said the same thing. I said once again, because I did have a friend who introduced me to it. He's like, when you get your printer, order these things right away so you have them.
Yeah. I can definitely recommend things like a flex plate is a really good add-on. I've seen people use those, and that looks so much easier than trying to scrape it off the plate. Yeah. They do have a disadvantage in that if the model has a lot of suction, it will overcome the magnetic force of the magnet and will cause the flex plate to bend, which pops your model off mid-print.
Right.
But once you get the angle and the supports in the right way, then that very rarely ever happens.
Yeah.
And it's
so I'm going to interrupt there because I kind of things coming through the conversation, and let's talk about settings, because there's a million of them, and it's all so confusing. Like you sent me some information. I went into Lightsheet and I was trying to change my resin information to any cubic I'm using, but they gave me a whole list of I chose my resin, and it has it's printed out the nanometers or whatever that is on it. Choose that. And then it just gives me 3 pages of listing of different numbers and exposure and whatnot. I'm like, I don't. What?
So Lightsheet is good because it has user submitted settings. So
Yes.
when you add your resin, it will give you people's settings that they've uploaded, which is a fantastic point to start from, because you can go look at it and go, oh, this many people recommend these settings, so, and they're roughly what I want to do. So you can start from that, and then you can tweak with it. But again, it is very dependent on humidity, heat, like where your printer's like positioned, if it's positioned hot area of a room or a cool area of a room. So resin should be kept warmer. Like a lot of people will add heating belts and stuff and fans to their printers to keep the resin roughly between 25 to 30 degrees Celsius, because it's more fluid at that temperature and creates better prints. I don't heat my resin. I find that the printer running for long enough tends to warm up the resin.
Right.
And where I keep my printer doesn't get unnecessarily cold. So some people keep their printer in a garage or something, so your resin's going to get very cold and it's not going to print well. But yeah, back to the settings, sorry. You have to adjust those settings. The most important one is the exposure time, like per layer. So you have two different ones. You have burn-in layers, which are the first few layers it uses to adhere to the build plate. So you want those to be somewhere between 25 to 30 seconds long each. And then about 5 to 10 layers is normally the good one. So that's usually the raft that the print will sit on, and that should adhere it nicely to your build plate for the first few layers, because those layers need to be adhered stronger to your build plate than they are to the FEP. Like once you get past that, it does depend on the resin. So the lighter color resin you want, the lower the exposure time that you need, because the UV light can transmit through it, and you don't want to bring resin on the other side of your light print. So again, it's a tweaking thing. There are various calibration tools you can use out there, which are worth looking at. There's I think Anycubic, all the major manufacturers have this one that's essentially a square object that prints in about 15 minutes and will give you various different tests to see the thing. Each one's slightly different, so it's worth looking at the manufacturer's recommendations on how it prints. A really good one, once you've done that, is to dial in the perfect exposure temperature. Is a thing called the cones of calibration, which I believe is made by a tabletop gaming company. The name escapes me at the moment, but I'll find the link and send it to you. That's got a specific test for getting the exposure dialed down to like a fraction of a second, like, so you can really get it as perfect as possible.
Right.
And then for me, the other important settings are how fast it lifts off the build plate, off the bottom. So that's the retract speed. So more modern printers have a 2-step retract speed. So they'll have a fast one that you can use for the first few millimeters, and then it slows down. And again, it's something that you have to tweak depending on various resins and things. And the other one is the light off delay, which I personally use quite a lot. It slows prints down, but it's worth it. So as you can imagine, when your build plate drops to the FEP, it's squeezing the resin in between the build plate and the bottom of the tank. So you have to give it just that moment for the resin to all stabilize and stop moving before it fires the UV light level. Otherwise, as the resin's moving, it just suddenly creates a layer that spreads out. So I normally run 1 second after the build plate drops to let the resin stabilize, and then it forms its layer, which gives you a much crisper outlook. It's what I did with the neck, which helps prevent that sort of like bundling of resin. So
this was a 7-hour print, but the detail is much better.
Sadly, you have to wait longer for better detail. So,
that's fine.
Also, don't believe what the manufacturers are going on with about speed. That's just their new marketing nonsense that they're into.
Right.
Like, if you want detail, you have to wait for it, unfortunately. I've run prints that have run 48 hours before, I think. So I was thinking about 20 nanometer layers for the entire build height of my printer. So So
Yeah.
the settings are something that, again, going back to how this is something you have to tinker with. It's not nearly as bad as what I hear from the FDM guys who are constantly tinkering with their printers to get the best out of them.
Yeah.
I generally find that once you find a resin you like, and you find the settings that work, you very rarely have to tinker with it. I normally only change the thickness of the layer. So I'll flip between 20 nanometers for that's the small parts, high surface detail, up to about 37 to 40 nanometers for really big objects that've got large flat surfaces or things like that. So because that just speeds up can take a few hours off your print.
All right, so we've talked about 3D printing and how you started and things you're working on, and ideally, you do commissions. People want something they can reach out to you, and you give them a quote and be like, yeah, I can make you the design, or I can print it for you, either or, right? Yeah. So we've talked about that. We talked about kind of meandered a little bit, talked about building and whatnot. What haven't I asked? What's something that you potentially want to talk about that I didn't cover?
Interesting, actually. That I hadn't thought of an answer for that one. I mean, I think we've covered quite a lot, but as you said, I am open for commissions, people. No, I do a lot of commission work, actually. My first commission was in AFV Modeler, David Parker's magazine, like a while ago. It was a load of buckets for the Queen's ambulance from World War II. So,
okay.
A guy commissioned me to do them, and they came out quite well, I might say.
Nice. Send me a link for that.
Yeah, I will do.
We got to get it out there.
Yeah, I do a lot of figures for people's D&D campaigns. That's quite a popular one. I do figure painting for people who are interested as well. So Hero Forge is a great one. You design your characters, get the STLs, print them and paint them for people. So
nice.
But yeah, mostly if people are after parts or after something, I do commission work. We can discuss it and I tell you how much I charge for it, which I know for a lot of people is probably too much. But,
well, I mean that thing said too much is relative. I mean it costs what it costs. When people ask me for quotes, for a build, how much? Because they all want refits. They all want 350 refits. I'm like $5,000. And then
every time somebody doesn't like the price, I tell them that you're paying for my experience and time. Like, you're not paying for a model, you're paying for somebody to make you a model. Because you could probably you could try and build it yourself, but you wouldn't get it to the same standard. So.
And that's the thing, though. But it's one of the things. So one of my jobs I had was I was an on the road sales rep for automotive radiators, and the company, like, I covered like a big area, Eastern Ontario. So let's say I had about a 500 kilometer circle, kind of give you an idea of kind of the amount of area I had to cover. And outside of Ottawa, I could sell no problem. Like, here's the thing, no forced sales pitch. Like, here's the thing we sell. I used it when I was a service manager at Honda. I was happy with it. I work for them now. Take that for what you will.
Yeah.
And always outside of Ottawa, no problem selling, no problem paying the shipping. It's like $10 for overnight shipping, like some ridiculously low number. Anyway, but in the city, I couldn't sell. And they're like, you got to sell in Ottawa. I'm like, I can't, because 1-800-RAD is undercutting us at every turn. Well, you got to sell the quality. I'm like, I can't sell quality, because the people who bought the rads haven't had a quality issue. Okay. And that's what it leads back directly to your statement. It's like, the prices, you give the people price and it's too high for the sticker shock. It's like, that's fine. And I'm not going to take that feeling away from you. but try to build it yourself.
Yeah,
Then come back to me and tell me that it's too much.
exactly. No. I mean, if you want quality, you have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and I think people forget that to get to the level that, I mean, I hate to say that I'm a good model maker. I'd say I'm an above average model maker. Like,
I would agree with that.
but it's
Above average. I mean, I've seen your Instagram.
oh, thank you. No, it takes time and patience and years to learn that. Like Bob Ross said, there's no such thing as talent. There's just practice skill. Like,
Yeah.
so that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the 20 years I've been building models. Yeah, and also the hundreds of hours it will take me to put one together.
Well, yeah,
But
exactly.
going back to commissions, though, if there is things that people want designed and they can't find out there, I'd like to let me know. I do work, and as you know, I tend to work quite fast. So,
Yeah, well, that's just it. I mean, we've you and I have talked about a handful of things already. Just things I've noticed, and you're like, yeah, let me get on that. And like the next day, you've got the file. Like, Jesus Christ!
well, I knocked out the entire cockpit to the Phoenix in one day. So,
Oh wow!
yeah,
Because I saw you haven't shown me pictures of a print, but you've got pictures of 3D file, right?
I've got the print now. I finally did it yesterday, and it came out pretty well actually.
Good. Yeah, because I remember the Fusion 360 image you'd posted. I'm like, that looks like a fairly complex assembly.
I mean, yeah, people are always like, "Oh, that looks so complex. How do you work that out? How do you work out how to do that?" And for me, I don't know how other people do it, but for me, I just imagine it down into its simple geometric shapes. Like that's the best way I could think to break stuff down. Because if you try to look at a big complex object in one go, it's a big complex object, and trying to work out how to do it is a nightmare. But
Break it down.
if you go, oh, actually, that's like 3 cylinders and a couple of squares, like that doesn't seem so bad.
Yeah.
And then eventually, once you've done that, you can work out how to do the more complex stuff. Compound curves, still a nightmare to me.
Yeah.
You get the hang of it. And once you know how to do it, you just see those shapes instinctively and it break it down. It's like the Phoenix cockpit is not an incredibly complicated cockpit. The most complicated bit for it was working out how to light the instrument panels because they're quite thin panels. So so all the lightable sections are printed in clear, to which you'll paint the light blocking and then lightly sand all the buttons down so the light comes through it. And then you just drop them into the control panels where they need to be.
Right.
So, even to do the weird vertical thing that's behind Will Riker on the back wall that I'm always used to think it was the warp core, but I was like, warp. I mean, mind you, I was only 14.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. So I said my experience already with your ability, quick turnaround times, accurate parts, helping me specifically print out this thing I couldn't 10 times. 10 of these I got. I got a couple that are passable I could work with, but for the most part, they're not the internet. So there's no question of quality. So the next question is, where can people find you?
Well, my primarily Instagram is my thing. So at Rose Model Company on Instagram is where to find me. I do 99% of all my posting on there. I do post in the Scale Model Critique group on Facebook. It's the one where it's run by Matt McDougall and Will Patterson and Chris Meddings and stuff. So they primarily do historical models in there, but the guys there have become quite fond of my science fiction stuff. So
good.
I'm spreading the word. Even doing a buddy build of the 350 refit with somebody from there. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so buddy build that will probably take like a year.
Well, like I said, I'm many months into my refit build, but I had to stop and take a break from it because I couldn't. Of all the things, I couldn't mask the inner warp grills.
Oh,
I could not get them masked cleanly, and I'm like,
yeah.
fuck this.
That's why I was considering Laserfire Creations ones, because I was
Mhm.
thinking the acrylic might be a bit
Mhm.
easier and cleaner to mask, and they do look very nice. So
Mhm.
it was an interesting thing he says on his website, actually, that the outside ones are not actually black; they're an aluminium.
No. Yeah, no, there it's yeah. When you look at the studio, because the inside one kind of has a bluish purpley look to it, like like heated metal.
Yeah,
And the outside, yeah, it's not black, but after post processing and all that stuff, I mean, what it looks like on screen is a far cry from.
yeah. One thing I have found interesting about science fiction modeling is that people in science fiction modeling use a lot more basic techniques than uh, like historical modelers, but
Yeah.
come out with fantastic results with them. So, for instance, in historical modeling, I would never use Vallejo paints. They're bloody awful, especially their primers. Their primers are just terrible. But
Mhm.
I've seen people like Lou Dalmaso and
Mhm.
Phil at Spruverse do fantastic work with them.
Yeah.
Um,
I've been using the I said some Vallejos, but almost exclusively the AK third generation acrylics.
I like those.
They're so good.
I do 99% of my main painting with lacquer based paints though. So I
Ooh.
use it's like MRP. Yeah, it's a lot. You have to wear all the PPE to do them and they stink to high heaven.
Yeah.
But lacquer painting gives you such a smooth and beautiful
Mhm.
surface. It's worth all the horribleness to it. And there's companies like MRP in the Czech Republic who do a wonderful range of paints, like incredible range. The AK Real Colors series are quite good as well. I also recently started using the Archive X paints, the Star Wars acrylics that
Okay.
have been produced, and they're color matched to all of the original colors that ILM used in the 70s.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, spot on matches to all of the. I believe they used a lot of. I'm trying to remember testers paints and stuff which in the UK you can't get hold of testers paints. They're impossible to get
Oh
hold of.
yeah, yeah. Well, Rust-Oleum discontinued them all.
Yeah,
Because I used to use the Model Master acrylic. They were great.
yeah,
Then they discontinued them, and then there was nothing because none
yeah.
of the hobby shops had a replacement yet.
Oh, when you get to your Star Wars ones, look up Archive X. Their paints
Okay,
are fantastic.
check
They're
that out.
a little bit hard to work with at first, but once you get the knack of how to thin them properly, they're really nice. They do for Star Wars. Nothing can beat their paints at all. They've got the famous Reefer White, which is the base coat for 90% of all Star Wars models. So,
Right.
and the color matches perfectly. So
Hmm.
I've been using those a lot. I think I've got way too many collections of different types of paints because I'm like, oh,
Well,
they look pretty good. And then
that's the other thing too. I mean, you collect models, you collect 3D files, you collect paint because one of those things you see it, you're like, I better buy it because I may not need it now, but when I need it, it's not going to be there.
yeah, exactly. I'm trying to do what Night Shift recommends and not just collect models, but actually build them. So,
Yeah, I've got to pick up my productivity to get through this.
yeah, I'm doing a buddy build with Robbie, the model guy from YouTube of the Katare Spitfire, the 132nd Mark 1 Spitfire,
Oh.
which is supposed to be an absolutely incredibly wonderful kit put together. It's Tamiya quality. So it should be a nice, fun build to do. And I've always
Which who made that one?
Katare, but they're a new
Okay,
company in New Zealand. So
gotcha. Because I remember earlier, maybe it might have been earlier in the year, Airfix had a big thing about a Spitfire they just
yeah,
released.
they did a 1/24th scale Mark 9 Spitfire, which is meant to be a fantastic kit. Being British, I have a love for Airfix.
Yeah.
Even though some of their kits are complete trash now, but the 1/24 Spitfire is meant to be quite a good one. But Qatari are made up of guys who used to be part of Peter Jackson's Wingnut Wings.
Ah.
Yeah, he used to make all the First World War planes. So the quality is insanely good. The detail is spot on. And being British, I believe the Spitfire is the most beautiful machine ever made. So.
We've already talked about a number of things. You've told us where we can find you to people. So people can contact you if they need anything created. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope you'll come back again.
Oh, I'd be happy to. I'm hoping to have the Ghost out by the end of the year, so I'd be happy to come on and talk about that at some point.
Perfect.
Finally get through to finishing it.
Finishing that's always the problem. But excellent. Sophie, thank you so much for your time. And, I'm sure I'll be talking to you.
Thanks a lot.
That was actually a pretty enjoyable conversation because, unlike a couple other people I've interviewed, we had become friends before the podcast episode, so it was a little bit more conversational, a little bit more relaxed, and it's something I'm working on as a podcast presenter. As I say to a friend, I'm having trouble finding my voice. There's a passion and intensity I have when talking about these things with friends I can't seem to present when I'm presenting, as it were. So I'm working on that, so, hopefully you'll stay tuned and enjoy the evolution. All that to say, a number of things have changed since that interview we had. As I said, we're kind of all working together. We worked together with HDA Model Works on this product that is available very, very soon. Right now, we're about the middle of March. They might be out by the end of the month. Could be April. I don't want to say for sure because I don't know, but soon is what I do know. As for Sophie, she's gained some notoriety out there. It's kind of an up-and-coming 3D designer. She does commissions, not just 3D designs, but model building like I do. I would definitely recommend, one, for sure, following her on social. If there's anything you need, especially like a 3D design, reach out because she's definitely the person for it. This podcast's gone on long enough. I don't want to ramble anymore, even though I am apt to. So thank you for listening / watching, depending on whatever platform you watch this on. If you enjoyed it, I think the best thing for me to ask you to do is to share it, because I don't know jack about promoting podcasts. So right now, anyone who finds it is kind of stumbling on it on the audio side, and I'm just using YouTube for the video side. So if you enjoyed it, please share it. Questions, comments, don't hesitate to reach out. Idea for episodes to cover, absolutely hit me up. You can reach me through any social platform of your preference at Jason's Model Shop, and we can chat. And I know I've already said it, but thank you so much, and I will see you the next time.